Have you ever cleaned a room where the walls still felt alive? I have. And I still don't have an explanation for what I witnessed that day. It wasn't blood that made me pause. I've scrubbed worse. It wasn't the stench either, though it hung thick, even through a double mask. No, what stopped me cold was the sound. A slow, damp inhale. Then another. Like the room itself was drawing breath through mold-choked lungs. I pressed my ear to the cracked plaster, and it exhaled. That job on Ashworth Lane should have been routine. A former funeral home, shut down after a scandal. Just clean and go. But halfway through the basement prep room, I realized I wasn't alone. Not in the normal sense. The walls were wet, breathing, remembering. My name is Daniel Price. I've worked in extreme cleanup for over a decade. Nothing ever stuck with me, until that day in Millbridge. My name is Daniel Price. I run a solo cleanup operation out of eastern Pennsylvania, mostly estate cleanouts, trauma scenes, the kind of jobs that get passed over because they're too messy or too haunted, depending on who you ask. I've been doing this for 12 years. People assume this line of work is disgusting or depressing. It's not. It's orderly. It's honest. Blood doesn't lie. Odors don't pretend. There's a brutal clarity in cleaning up after death. It leaves no room for illusion. I've scraped dried viscera from motel ceilings, bagged what was left of a man who tried to become invisible with a shotgun. I've scrubbed splatter off church pews. You learn to detach. You have to. It's just matter, just physics, just entropy. Most of my work starts with a quiet phone call. No small talk, no emotions. Just a name, an address, and a request to make it go away. I don't ask questions. I show up, assess, and get to work. Full PPE, air scrubbers if needed, enzyme sprays, industrial solvents, a good pair of boots, and a stronger stomach. The day I got the call about 1247 Ashworth Lane, it was no different at first. A lawyer representing the Whitmore estate needed a full interior clearance. The building had been sealed for months. Former funeral home. Abandoned after a series of legal complications, though she didn't elaborate. Just asked if I could finish in 5 days. I've dealt with worse. When I arrived that morning, the outside looked unremarkable. Red brick. A carved wooden sign that still read Whitmore Sons since 1912. No obvious damage. No broken windows. Just quiet. Still, like the building had been holding its breath. It wasn't until I stepped inside, down into the basement prep room, that I realized something was wrong. Not dangerous, not yet, but wrong in a way my equipment couldn't measure. I used to believe everything could be cleaned, neutralized, and removed. I don't believe that anymore. The front door opened with a sigh, like it had been holding something in. I spent the first hour on the main floor, snapping photos, making a checklist, furniture removal, document shredding, medical disposal permits, standard stuff. A few scattered chairs, dusty urns, a reception area with a fake ficus plant still somehow alive. The upstairs office had already been cleared. Desk drawers open, nothing inside but air. The real work was in the basement. That's where they did the prep work. Where the bodies were embalmed, washed, dressed, stored. The stairs creaked beneath my weight, groaning like ribs shifting after rigor. At the bottom was a long hallway lined with ceramic tile. The kind of tile that tries to look clean even when it's been soaked in things that rot. Cold air greeted me, not stale, not sour, just wrong. Like a fridge unplugged too long but still pretending to work. There were 3 prep rooms. The first 2 were empty. Stainless steel counters, yellowed task lights, disinfectant smell barely clinging to cracked linoleum. But it was the 3rd room, the one at the end, that made me pause. The light switch didn't work. So I used my headlamp. What I saw wasn't unusual, on the surface. An embalming table in the center, cabinets lining the wall, a sink stained with years of use. But there were small details that didn't fit. The table was damp. The drains, dry but smeared with something reddish beneath clear layers of gel. The walls were uneven. Not broken, not damaged. Just subtly distorted. As if they had swollen and settled again, like lungs after death. Then I noticed the scratches. long vertical gouges beneath the tiled wall. Faint at first, then deeper, parallel, human-sized, fingernail width. A pattern not of violence, but of persistence. Someone had clawed from the inside. I crouched, traced the lines with a gloved hand. They ran along the wall, stopping abruptly at a patch of tile that didn't quite match the rest. I stood still, no draft, no hum. Then something shifted behind the wall. A breath. I straightened slowly. Maybe it was just the house settling. Or maybe the room remembered. I took photos, as I always do. Every scratch, every surface anomaly, every odd smear or stain. Documenting isn't just for legal protection. It's how I stay sane. If I can capture it, name it, file it, then it's real. Measurable, rational, but no camera caught the air. It felt dense, like the walls were pressing in just slightly, enough to notice when I moved. I stepped outside the room for a break and reviewed the floor plans Margaret had emailed me. According to the blueprint, the wall with the scratches backed into a concrete storage recess, sealed years ago. No doors, no vents, just dead space behind dead tile. So why did I hear breathing? I decided to investigate further upstairs. The office might have clues. It didn't take long to find the filing cabinet hidden behind a folding partition. Most of the drawers were empty, but one was jammed. I pried it open with a flathead. Inside were client records. Names, dates, handwritten notes in cramped, spidery cursive. Most were typical. Embalming instructions, next of kin contacts, cremation authorizations. But a few were different. They had no family contact listed, no burial location, no release signature. Each file was stamped with a red Whitmore Direct across the top. The last entry was dated 6 months ago, March 14th. Initials, TB. Service status prep complete. Hold. Hold? No body should ever be marked hold after prep. Not for that long. Then I found something worse. A key taped inside the folder. Old brass. No tag. Worn smooth. I returned to the basement, key in hand. There were no visible locks, but then I noticed one of the cabinets had mismatched hinges. Subtle, but newer. Beneath it, a shallow groove in the tile. I inserted the key. It turned with a slow, deliberate click. The cabinet creaked open, revealing not shelves, but stairs. Crude concrete steps leading down into blackness, not part of any blueprint. Not part of anything I'd agreed to clean. Something was buried under Whitmore Sons, and it had been sealed away, not forgotten, not destroyed, only waiting. I didn't go down those stairs that night. I closed the cabinet, locked it again, and told myself I'd come back with better lighting and backup. A stupid lie. I work alone, always have. But the truth is, I wasn't ready. Instead, I returned to the prep room to finish cleaning the surface-level mess. That's when the power cut out. Not the whole building, just that room. My headlamp flickered, then dimmed, then died entirely. And in that pitch-black silence, I heard it again. The breathing. Not like before. This was closer. Wet. Labored. Right behind the wall. I backed out slowly, hand on the doorframe. The hall lights were still on, flickering slightly. Old wiring, I told myself. The storm outside must be messing with the grid. Except there was no storm. My phone had no service. No missed calls, just a black screen pulsing with the emergency flashlight I'd finally remembered to turn on. I headed upstairs to regroup. Maybe call it for the night, but halfway up the staircase I froze. The carpet was damp. Not soaked, just recently wet. Like someone with dripping clothes had walked through minutes ago. But there were no footprints. No trail, just moisture with no source. In the embalming room, my tools were scattered. I never leave them like that. Never. The solvent bottle was tipped over, leaking in slow pulses onto the tile. And there, on the table I had just cleaned, were handprints. Not mine. Smaller, slightly smeared, as if someone had reached out with trembling fingers and pushed themselves up. I stepped back, then noticed something that nearly made me drop the light. The walls were weeping. Not metaphorically. Literally. Thin streaks of reddish fluid were seeping from between the tiles. It wasn't blood. Not fresh, anyway, but it smelled wrong. Like old metal and embalming fluid and things long past decay. And beneath it all, rising slowly in rhythm with the drops, was the sound of breath. Wet, intentional, waiting. That room wasn't empty. It never had been. I left that night without finishing the job. Didn't pack up, didn't file a report. I just walked out, locked the front door, and sat in my truck with the engine running and the heat off. My gloves still smelled like the walls, like rot trying to disguise itself as cleanliness. At home, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that inhale, that slow, dragging breath leaking through tile. So I did what I wasn't supposed to do. I started digging. County records, property history, legal case files, anything with the name Whitmore. What I found was worse than rumor. Kevin Whitmore wasn't just convicted of murder. His charges included unlawful disposal of human remains. The court documents described non-standard handling of decedents, but didn't elaborate. Records beyond the verdict were sealed, citing public trauma risk. But one thing stood out, an evidence list. Item number 42, handwritten notebook recovered from furnace chamber. Condition, partial. Contents redacted. I searched every forum, every dark corner of the internet. Eventually, I found a thread, long since archived, on an old morbid curiosity message board. Someone claiming to be a former mortuary assistant at Whitmore Sons had posted a single photo. It was a page from that notebook. The handwriting matched the files I found in the office, but it wasn't embalming notes. It was a list of rules. Rule number 1, never prepare them after dark. Rule number 2, do not speak to them, even if they speak first. Rule number 3, if they start to breathe, leave. You're already too late. The post had no replies, the account was deleted. I went back to the house the next day, just after sunrise. I told myself I'd finish what I started. Clear the building, erase the traces. But when I opened the door, something was different. All the furniture was back in place. Chairs upright, curtains drawn, my tools all returned to their original position. Even the solvent spill was gone. It was like the building had reset itself. Or worse, that someone or something didn't want the cleaning to stop. I didn't tell anyone I was going back. No report to the lawyer, no call to the police, just packed my tools, a backup light, and the brass key I'd kept hidden in my glove compartment. It was still early. The fog off the river hadn't burned off yet. The building looked the same, except quieter, like it knew I was coming back. I went straight to the cabinet, unlocked it, opened the hidden stairs. This time I went down. The air changed after the 4th step. It wasn't just colder, it was thicker, like breathing through gauze soaked in formaldehyde. My flashlight flickered again just once, then held. The steps ended in a narrow corridor lined with pipes. No tiles, just concrete sweating with time. On the left, a metal door stood slightly ajar. No markings, no handle. I pushed it open. Inside was a windowless room, maybe 12 feet across. A slab in the center, chains on the walls. And along the far end, Polaroids. Hundreds. Yellowing, curling at the edges, each pinned with rusted tacks. Faces. Some peaceful, some not. All dead. I stepped closer. The photos had dates, codes, initials, most from years ago. But the most recent ones, the bottom row, were different. They weren't labeled, and they were moving, just barely. A flicker here, a shift in shadow there, as if the image itself was breathing. My heart slammed against my ribs. I turned to leave, then heard the chains rattle. Not behind me, under the slab. I froze, waited. It came again. A subtle clang of metal on concrete, a dragging sound like someone shifting their weight below the floor. I backed toward the door, light shaking in my hand. And that's when the breathing returned. But not from the room, from me. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until it forced its way out, slow and shallow. And then the room exhaled back, in rhythm, like we were synced, like it had been waiting. I stumbled out of that room, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I should have left, driven away, called the authorities, burned the place down. But instead I went back upstairs, to his office. I don't know what I was looking for. Answers? Justification? Some thread to tie all this madness together? The desk was just as I had left it days ago, but now I saw what I hadn't noticed before, a panel behind the bookshelf, slightly misaligned. I pried it open. Inside was a compartment, dusty but intact. Files, dozens of them. Not official records, personal ones. Kevin Whitmore had kept his own log. A thick, leather-bound journal, yellowed with sweat and time. I flipped through the pages with shaking fingers. The entries were clinical, cold, observational. TB, male, mid-20s, claimed to hear them in the walls before extraction, breathing irregular, mimicked patterns. Possible echo link? LR female, unstable post-injection, displayed signs of synchronization, died during Phase 3, buried beneath Prep Room 3. Note, never prep when the building hums. It's not power, it's them waking. He knew. This wasn't about murder. It was ritual. Kevin hadn't been disposing of bodies. He'd been feeding something. And those listed initials, some matched the red-stamped files I found earlier, others matched the faces on the wall downstairs. But one entry made my skin crawl. DP cleaner, quiet type, no attachments, susceptible to rhythms, monitor if he returns alone. That's when I heard it again. Chains, floorboards, and a new sound, one I hadn't heard before. Footsteps, coming from the prep room. Not slow, not hesitant, purposeful. I froze, listened. One step, then another, then nothing. I bolted for the front door, fumbled with the lock. It wouldn't turn. The air was thick again, like something pressing against my chest from the inside. My limbs were heavy. Every breath felt borrowed. Then I saw it. In the reflection of the glass pane by the entrance. A figure, standing in the hallway behind me. Not Kevin, not any human shape I could recognize. It pulsed, moved with the rhythm I'd been hearing all week. Inhale, exhale. Like it had learned my pattern. Matched me. Become me. I ran. Broke through the side door, left everything behind. Tools, notes, evidence. Drove until the sun rose, not caring where. When I finally stopped, I checked my phone. The last photo I took before I left the basement had uploaded automatically to the cloud. I opened it, zoomed in. And there, in the corner of the frame, was the same figure, watching me, from inside the wall. I never went back to the funeral home. Didn't return the key, didn't submit the invoice. A week later, Margaret, the lawyer, left a voicemail asking for an update. I deleted it. Then came the certified letter, breach of contract, potential legal action. I didn't care. I was already slipping. It started with the dreams, always the same. I'm back in the prep room, except the walls are closer, breathing louder. The light above flickers in rhythm with my own pulse, and just as I reach for the door, I wake up, but not alone. I swear I can hear someone inhale just outside my bedroom wall. My therapist thinks it's trauma. My general practitioner thinks it's stress-induced auditory hallucinations. Neither of them has seen the photos. I don't show them. What's the point? They'd say I edited them, that it's mold or trick of light or pareidolia. But I know what I saw, what I still see. Because here's the thing, no one tells you about the supernatural. It doesn't need your belief. It doesn't care about your logic. It just lingers. I stopped taking contracts. Shut down the business. Sold my truck for parts. The house is cold most nights. I leave the heat off. Something about the warmth seems to invite breath. I hear it more when I'm still, when I focus. And the worst part? It's sinking again. I'll be lying in bed, perfectly still, and I'll notice. My breathing isn't mine anymore. It's with something else. An echo. A second rhythm that starts when I do and stops just after. Like it's listening, learning, mimicking. I once tried to hold my breath just to break the pattern. And I swear the walls panicked. They creaked, groaned, as if something behind them was struggling, trying to match me, afraid I might leave it behind. Or worse, cut it off. I haven't told my ex-wife. Haven't seen my daughter in months. What would I say? I brought something home from the dead. There are nights I lie awake staring at the drywall beside my bed, wondering what would happen if I broke it open. Would there be pipes? Wires? Or a face pressed against the other side, matching mine, waiting for breath? I tried to forget. Tried to bury it under routine. Grocery lists, silent meals, long walks through neighborhoods where no one knew my name, but the silence only made things louder, so I started looking again. Not for the funeral home, for others. It began with a forum post, buried deep in a defunct message board for retired morticians. A thread titled, "Prep Room Breathing? Anyone else?" Most replies were jokes, trolls, but one stood out. Elmhurst, 2009. My father heard it first, said the vents were sighing. We thought he was slipping. Then we heard it too. We moved out. But sometimes, when it's quiet, I swear I still hear it, through the walls. We were 5 states away by then. Another user replied, "Ours wasn't a funeral home, just an old hospital wing, sealed since the 80s. They reopened it for vaccine storage during COVID. That's when it started. Staff reported whispers, Synchronized nosebleeds, and walls that sweated through concrete. They closed it again, silently. The deeper I dug, the more I found. Not just funeral homes. Decommissioned morgues, abandoned surgical wings, prep rooms never listed on official blueprints. And always the same symptoms. Stale air that moved on its own. Walls that flexed. A rhythm, always a rhythm. Some called it structural decay. Others said it was mold-induced psychosis. But just a few, called it echo-presence. A pattern that starts when death happens wrong. When bodies are violated. When rituals are ignored. When grief is erased too quickly. According to one anonymous post, these echoes form when the dying are never fully released. When the moment between last breath and silence is stretched unnaturally, distorted by trauma, cruelty, or neglect. And once formed, they need new breath to survive. That's why they mimic. Why they follow. Why they wait behind the walls. Not to haunt. To become. I haven't gone back to Ashworth Lane, but I did go by another location last week. Just a favor for an old colleague. A clinic cleanup, nothing special. But as I walked past the basement stairwell, I heard it again. That long, slow inhale. And this time, it matched me perfectly. People ask me why I left the cleanup business. Some think it was burnout. Others whisper addiction, trauma, money problems. I let them guess. The truth is harder to explain. Because it wasn't one moment. Not the breathing walls, not the photos, not the journal or the echo beneath the slab. It was what came after. The silence that wasn't silent. The realization that whatever lived beneath Whitmore Sons wasn't bound to that place. That once you share breath with it, once your lungs sink even once, you've invited something in. And it's patient. It doesn't slam doors, doesn't whisper in tongues. It waits for you to breathe. And every night now I lie in bed with the lights off, listening for it. Sometimes I test it, hold my breath. It always holds with me. Then exhales just after. Like it's behind the wall, cheek pressed to mine, lungs mimicking, heartbeat one step behind. I try to outpace it. Breathe faster, shallow, jagged. But it matches. Slower, steadier, more confident. Like it's teaching me how to breathe its way. And I wonder, what happens if I forget my own rhythm? If one day I stop and it doesn't? What if I'm the echo now? I once thought my job was to clean death out of places. To remove its trace, sanitize its breath. But some deaths don't leave. They linger. Not because of ghosts or demons or revenge, but because we made them that way. We rushed the goodbye. We skipped the rituals. We erased the presence before it was done being here. And now, something else is finishing it. There are places you can scrub with every chemical known to man, and still, something remains. A pulse in the drywall. A sigh in the vents. A rhythm behind the silence. I've learned to live with it. Not fight, not deny. Just notice. And maybe that's the scariest part of all. Not the blood. Not the breathing. But the possibility that the most dangerous things don't scream. They wait in rhythm. They wait for you to forget which breath is yours. And when you do, they take the next one.